Today, I'm giving myself the challenge of creating this image from the Photo Draw Club in 9 different famous artists' art styles. The Photo Draw Club is a weekly photo art prompt that I post over on Instagram. Here's the page, and I'll definitely link it down below. But this is the photo for the most recent week, and I'm really excited to see what creativity comes out today. Let's get into our first artist of the day, and this is the amazing Gustav Klimt. For him, I'm going with some yellows, oranges, some gold. I'm thinking black. I'm going to be using paint as well as other mixed media, and it's going to be a lot of fun. He's got some really interesting work. And now for the fun part, getting to add some color. I'm starting out with some yellows. Gustav Klimt has a lot of patterning in his artwork, so I definitely want to incorporate that. I'm going to sort of vary the placing of the different colors and just have a lot of fun with all of these beautiful shades of color. Gustav Klimt has a lot of Egyptian influence in his art, so I definitely want to incorporate that into this picture as well. I think that the clouds will be one place, and then possibly the background. He really loved having like different kinds of spirals and just flowing lines, so I think that is what I'll do in the background. And that's the end of this Gustav Klimt inspired artwork. I'm really excited about how this turned out. It was so fun to experiment with his art style. I'd love to know which of his paintings you really like. He has an amazing collection of artworks, and yeah, this is really fun to experiment. For our next artist, it is Georgia O'Keeffe. She creates some beautiful artworks that use a lot of like softer colors in some of her floral paintings. So that's what I'm going to be using for this artwork. I've got acrylic paints in lots of different shades, and I'm really excited to dive into some florals and incorporate them as much as I can into this artwork. So far, I've got a couple of nature themes in this painting already. I'm kind of working now on a sunflower at the back, and then I'll see if I can fit in some clouds as well. George's work is really up close and some beautiful, beautiful florals and very detailed work that she does. On my little piece of paper, I can't really fit all of those, but I'm just trying to give that essence of her work, and I love these softer tones as well. I think that really speaks quite nicely to her style of art. I just realized now that I'm speaking almost as if she's still alive, but I guess that's the feeling I get when I look at her paintings, is there's so much life in them and just they are so beautiful. Georgia O'Keeffe passed away a year before I was born in 1986, and she passed away in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She was a really brilliant American painter. For the last part, I'm just going to define a couple of the details with pencil, but that is basically the finished artwork. Let me know some of your favorite paintings of hers below. Next up, we have the Belgian-born Rene Magritte, who was a surrealist artist, and he had a lot of elements of surprise in his artwork, very unexpected pieces. I'm going to be creating this artwork today in a collage, because I want the colors to be really visible. So I'm using bits of paper that I've gotten from magazines, and I'm going to be creating elements of his artwork and his style in this painting. I'm going to think out of the box for this one and try be really creative. So far it's coming along. I've got the background, and then I really wanted to highlight this one painting of his, which is The Son of Man. It's where he has this top hat and then he has an apple in front of his face, or in front of the man's face in the painting. So I wanted to incorporate those apples and definitely the top hats somewhere in this picture. So my idea is to kind of have the apples falling from the sky to kind of bring in some of that repetition, because there's also in some of his artworks quite a bit of repetition, with repeated forms and patterning kind of as well, like, you know, one form that repeats many times over. So that's the idea with the apples. And then I'm also going to incorporate that same idea with the top hat. to end it off, I'm putting this glass on his palette, and the top hats are representing the colors. So it's definitely a strange, different kind of painting, but that is what surrealist art is. It's really out of the box and quite different to your everyday paintings. So I really like how vibrant the colors came out in this, and this is the final painting or picture collage. The next artist is Piet Mondrian. He was a Dutch artist, and he had a very distinctive style with black lines, shapes, and the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. As I'm creating this artwork, I'm really trying to make sure that I don't place the same two colors next to each other. So I'm sort of working, especially using, and I want to leave like some white spaces at the end as well. So I'm working sort of from one color to the next and placing different colors next to each other. So that's about it for my Piet Mondrian artwork. I did this one in markers and it was so much fun. The next amazing artist is very well known. It's Michelangelo, the Italian sculptor and painter whose work is featured on the Sistine Chapel ceilings. And there's one of his paintings that I'm going to try to bring really and incorporate into this piece to sort of be the defining signifier of his, style. So it is the piece which has the hands that are pointing to each other. So I'm going to try to draw the hand. My artwork is going to not look at all like Michelangelo's because his work is super, super, super detailed. So I'm just going for like a basic replica of sort of his style, that if you looked at the artwork, you might have the idea that it is sort of an ode to Michelangelo. So here we go. I decided to do this painting mostly with watercolors because watercolors you can achieve that really like soft, light sort of colors. So that's sort of why I'm doing that. I chose maybe the wrong paper to do it on, so I might stick this on a harder paper later on. And then I think that I might add a little bit of pencil work at the end because I have this idea that it would be cool to make the palette look like wooden because he definitely would not have been painting on a plastic palette. So I'm going to try and create a wooden look to the palette to give it a little bit of that like older look. And this is the final artwork. Let me know if you have seen his work in the Sistine Chapel. I'd love to know what's your favorite piece of his. Next up, we have the Spanish artist Salvador Dali, who was also a surrealist artist, and his work was really interesting because a lot of it represented almost like dreamlike sequences. So it gets really weird at some points. So I'm going to really try and incorporate some of that aspect into this artwork, go wild with my imagination. And I think I'm going to mimic one of his famous pieces where the clock is kind of hanging. So I'm going to do that with the palette and have the palette hanging over this branch. It's going to be fun to create this one. I also really wanted to incorporate some of the fact that some of his artworks are quite dark and others are quite light, so sort of incorporate that into the background of this painting. I think what I'm going to do is sort of have half the painting be nighttime and the rest of the painting be daytime. And the markers are helping bring this artwork to life. And now for the last finishing touches, but I think this is pretty much done. And this was so much fun to create, so I really had to dive into my imagination. And so if you have any of his paintings that you like, definitely comment them down below. I'd love to know. Our next artist is the brilliant Yayoi Kusama, a Japanese artist who's currently still alive and creates brilliant artworks that are so bold and colorful and just interesting to look at. She makes a lot of use of dots in her artwork, so I'm definitely going to be incorporating that. I'm going to add in those bright colors, and there's also a lot of patterns and just really interesting elements. So I hope to bring this work to life with all of those characteristics. I'm having so much fun doing these colors and these dots and patterns. I really am excited about the contrasting colors sort of the blue and yellow next to each other and how this is all coming together. It's quite interesting to create this kind of art, and just such a distinctive style. So exciting. I'm going in with a couple of dark black lines just to bring the palette out. But that's the final piece. This is really exciting to create. Definitely comment down below some of the works of hers that you like. I'd love to know. And yeah, just such an interesting artist. The next artist that I'm highlighting is Jackson Pollock. He was an American artist, part of the abstract expressionist movement, and he had such a fun style. So what I've done is I've mixed some water with my acrylic paints to make them kind of runny. I've got a couple of different colors here, and I'm just going to really try to mimic his art, but on a very small scale. So he used to take his paintbrushes and just kind of like throw the paint onto the canvas, and it's just a lot of splatters, and it's just really different kind of art. And so I'm going to try and create that, but I do want the palette to be a little bit recognizable in this piece, so that's why I've drawn it here with some pen first, and I'm just painting a solid color into my background to begin, and then I'm gonna go wild and I'm gonna start with the spraying. I'm so excited to do this. It's just one of those art projects that you can do if you just want to let loose and have some fun and just be creative and not really care what the painting's going to look like at the end, because the paint kind of speaks for itself and how it moves and how it attaches to the canvas. So yeah, let's do it. That was so much fun. So now I've put it outside to dry in the sun because there was so much like wet paint and I didn't want it to run too much. But here it is at the end. I painted a little bit around the palette to highlight it, but that was so exciting to create. For the last artist, I'm focusing on Claude Monet, who created some amazing artworks, and especially the water lily pond. That's the artwork of his that I'm going to be focusing on recreating in this miniature size today. I'm also going to be using acrylic paints to do this, and I'm kind of going to also reuse some of the paints that I just used for the Jackson Pollock, and then add in a couple of lighter tones and bring together all of that scene with these acrylic paints. This painting is slowly coming together. Claude Monet was most well known for his impressionist painting, so now I'm going to take a tiny paintbrush and I'm going to add in like as many little details. I'd really love to have some water lilies on my river, and if I can put some grass in the background as well. But yeah, this is how it's coming along. And that's the final Claude Monet painting. This was so fun to create. Let me know your favorite painting of his in the comments. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. Here are all 9 of the art paintings and art styles together. We've got the Gustav Klimt, we've got the Giorgio O'Keeffe, Rene Magritte with his surrealism. I really love this one. And we have Piet Mondrian with his very angular style. We've got Michelangelo, Salvador Dali, and then Yayoi Kusama, Jackson Pollock, and lastly the little Claude Monet. Thanks for joining me for this video today. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time for another video.